Welcome to Glow and Grow Sessions. I'm your co-host, Lynn, business owner and award-winning boudoir photographer specializing in women empowerment.
And I'm your co-host, Jaqueline, business owner, hair and makeup professional, and content creator.
We worked together for years in the studio, providing a safe space for women to be vulnerable, gain confidence, learn to love their bodies, and self-explore.
The women that had come to our studio all have a story that they have shared with us. Our intention for this podcast is to extend that safe space to share those stories. We'll explore topics like overcoming internal fears, nurturing self-worth, and embracing self-love.
We believe in the power of showing up for yourself, and we're here to guide you through that journey. Join us as we dive deep into empowering conversations to uplift and inspire you.
Let's glow and grow together.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode. Today, we have our first guest on the podcast, Jacqueline Robinson. I'm so excited for this episode. Jacqueline is an intimacy and feminine energy coach, and she has been working with women for over 15 years. What she does with her clients is help them reach a deeper space of who they are. So Jacqueline focuses on an emotional and mystical tone, and we're going to talk a lot about the spiritual and some woo-woo things in this episode, but Jaqueline and I love it. We are totally into the spiritual stuff as well. I'm actually an energy healer myself, and I do intuitive readings with oracle cards. So this is totally up my alley. We talked with Jacqueline for over 2 hours. Because this is so long, we decided to split it into 2 parts. And in this first part, Jacqueline talks about her work with women, the difference in feminine energy versus a feminist, and she also shares a personal story about an affair in her marriage. Now, I understand this could be triggering for some people, especially if you have experienced that in your marriage. But I do encourage you to listen to this episode. It's very surprising, and then it's inspiring. She shares the story of how it changed her for the better. And that's the core message of this entire episode. That, again, we're going to split into 2 parts. So let's start with part 1. You don't want to miss this. Let's get started. Hi, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for joining us today. You are our first guest.
I love that. I love that. Thank you.
And we're so excited to have you here. And let's start out with you talking about yourself and what it is that you do for women.
Okay, so I have been working with women for 15 years, and it has evolved over time. And now a large part of my work really revolves around women feeling very comfortable, first of all, in their physical body, but then on an emotional level, deepening into the mystical tone that women carry, very much focusing on her sexuality, which is not, as we all might believe it to be, just the sex piece. So I would say overall, it's really bringing women into a deeper space of who they are and loving that and really beaming that into the world, and through doing so, changing the world. I love that.
Yes, we love that too. That's like basically what we're all about. So that's why we're so excited to have you here today to share more and like connect our communities together and learn more about what you have to say. So I want to ask you, when I was looking through your website and your content, you speak a lot about feminine energy. What exactly does that mean?
That's a great question. Many people, when you say feminine energy, either go to a really glamorous girly girl who's all dressed up and looks like the beautiful model of a woman, or they go to the 60s and the feminist movement and burning the bras and just doing away with everything that sets us apart as women, and really, in some ways, blurring that line between the sexes or the genders. Which, by the way, I'm a mama of a transgender child, so I have no ill feelings or judgments around that. That human is phenomenal. I love him to pieces. And I teach from what is true in me and what I live. And I am a very feminine, essenced being. So feminine energy, very much to me, I could almost put side by side with sexuality. And it is the essence of who she is. It is the signature from the perspective of her soul, from the perspective of her DNA and where she comes from and what her lineage has been. We hear a lot in the spiritual world about the ancestral line and needing to clear it. And absolutely, yes. And there are gifts in the ancestral line that are, in many ways, when it comes to women, have a feminine lineage and legacy through time. And we need more of that alive and available and present between us when we come together. So all aspects of those, for me, are the feminine. It's the whole essence of being woman and loving it and being alive in her and moving with her elegance and grace and sensuality and wisdom and purity and her innocence and her power. It's all of that. All of that.
I love that. I think what's really awesome about that is we sort of do the same thing here in the studio with helping women get in touch with that side of themselves. Like some have lost that feeling of like that strong, powerful woman inside of them, or they've lost connection with their sensual side, or they just need to reconnect with that feminine energy. And I think here in the studio, that's really important to us, is to help them achieve that, but also like achieve that. I like to talk about like the feminine gaze, like with photography. And in the studio, we have a few photos that are like from the male gaze for if they are gifting it to a partner. There are photos that are sexy photos of their physical state. But when Lynn is photographing with the the female gaze, it's capturing all of what you're saying. And I think that's a perfect way of describing like femininity and feminine gaze, is capturing all of those aspects, not just looking at one specific, like it's not your chest that makes you feminine or your booty that makes you feminine. That's more of like the male, like a masculine perspective on femininity, where real true womanhood and femininity can be so much more than that. So I really like what you have to say about that.
I do have a question. I've been hearing a lot lately of women, especially like single moms, kind of have to be in the masculine and feminine energy at the same time. And I find that those ladies are the ones that probably have the hardest time stepping into that feminine energy when they come into the studio or they're looking for experiences like that. And it's not just them, also women who maybe have a partner that haven't been showing up for them the way they should. Do you have any advice or anything to help them kind of figure out that how to get back to being a feminine essence or balancing it out?
Yes. So certainly for the single mama who is managing everything, it's challenging to find the place to just be woman. And whether it's the single mama, whether it's the woman who's been married a long time and their relationship really has settled into just companions, and maybe she lets him know, I would love you to pick up your socks. So it's more of a mother than a partner lover. What I would say to any of those women, and it's very common, by the way, it's not only the single mamas, it's not only the women who have been married, it's in our culture and the feminine collective consciousness that over time, certainly for one, to quote, fight for our rights. Well, to fight, to be the aggressor, to become the warrior is a very masculine-based energy. So even when we're doing something that feels right and true, that that masculine, I've always seen it as it will sort of become a shell over her feminine. So to the women who relate to this, here's what I would do if they were walking with me or I was walking beside them. I bring women deeper into themselves. Like, I always imagine it as though you're, and if you aren't able to see me, just envision this, that you're like, I'm pulling my hands up to the crown of my head and bringing, almost as though you're bringing the richness, the deliciousness, the sensuality, the ecstasy, the elegance, the love of being woman, and you feel it move all the way down in your body, so that at your root, also, which is in your sex, where you sit upon the earth, you feel it alive, like you feel that deep, rich, full-bodied woman. That is how I would walk beside a woman. And of course, that's the beautiful description of it. The practice of it is to really be with her as she expands her capacity to hold the fullness of all she is. Yeah, I feel as women, we haven't been taught how to do that.
That just gave me goosebumps.
That's so, oh yeah.
Me too. Yeah, goosebumps.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Yes.
Like I could almost, as you were describing it and I'm watching you do it, I'm like, oh, I feel this too.
Yeah.
It's like, really right. Yeah. Oh, I still have goosebumps.
I do too. Like, I can feel the little tingles on my body. That's how you know you're speaking truth. Yeah.
Yeah, and it becomes an activation. That's what you just experienced was now, even if it's not black and white, clear on paper, you can write it down. That was an activation, and it opened even more of your love of being woman, which is, I believe, bold statement to make. I believe, and when I work with women, I see it prove true that we have this desire and longing to connect and to be in relationship and to be with the partner, whether that's the man or the woman, but that masculine, we want that. Even more deeply than that, we want to be and live and feel and sense and express and move and just everything in how we live our life as women. We are so hungry for that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I feel like I had the activation because I'm an entrepreneur, and being an entrepreneur, you kind of have to be in that masculine energy. You know, sometimes I can be in the feminine, and I think that's why I feel so drawn to what I do, because I'm helping other women, but it also helps me, and I know Caitlin feels the same way too. You know, like that's what we love about doing this is it lights us up. We feel good. Like, you know what I mean?
I see it. I can feel it from both of you, and I see it. If I may, I would like to speak to what you just said. And here's another sort of radical expanse on feminine energy. And it, in my work and in the colleagues of women that I am connected to, who are also business women, entrepreneurs, what I am seeing happen now, because we know that we are in evolution on the planet, right? We're coming out of the age of Pisces. We're really the bridge walkers into the Aquarian age. And it's a very different signature of energy. What I sense in this time and space is that, yes, there is that more masculine yang energy. But what I'm also beginning to see is the structural feminine. And it's something different than we're accustomed to. So, for example, Lynn, when you speak about business for you and Kaylin, I also see that there's the yang, right? There's the yang piece. But within our woman, there's this structure. And I'm saying that word on purpose more than once. Imagine it as, Kaylin, you have a son. When he was growing in your belly, he was within your womb. So your womb became the structure that birthed this new life. I firmly believe and am beginning to weave it into my teachings that we as women also, and as business women, we have the ability to build, which is a very masculine word traditionally, but to strengthen and build our own internal structure that can hold this gorgeous, voluptuous, feminine energy to flow through. So it's fascinating, and I'm still teasing apart, okay, structural feminine or masculine yang. Still really getting a sense of that. I mention it here because to me, the structural feminine is connected to true feminine power. With that, we'll go back to the womb example. With that structure, the feminine power to conceive, nurture and nourish and gestate and birth new life comes alive, right? So we have all of that. And that's not to say we don't need men. I love men very, very much. I love men. And it's also about acknowledging and honoring who we truly are as women and the pieces that have been lost over time.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I love that example. Yes. How's a woman in her power different from being a feminist?
Haha. Okay, so more visual. If you think about the time of the feminist, first of all, I mentioned one piece, which was there was a fight, right? So some aggressor, some energy that is being almost like pushed or forced outside the body is happening. That's a masculine. The masculine drives, the masculine penetrates. We like it a lot, usually. So that's the masculine, which is pointing outward, pointing upward. The feminist movement also was very much about women projecting, and we have power through the fight. Here's the other side of feminine power, which, first of all, I just spoke about the womb, the structural feminine. We have the power to create and birth life. Feminine power is the opposite of the outward push. Feminine power is what I described of that going down and in and deep. And you can almost sense that as she does, her voice gets deeper and fuller and richer and has that sort of velvety Hollywood 50s glamour of a woman who could really hold the full sensuality of all she is.
So it sounds like you're describing feminine power is a state of mind, internal feeling of being someone, versus the feminist is like you said, pushing it out. Okay.
Yeah. And I would say feminine power, yes, a state of mind, but the state of mind is the result of the deeper love for who she is, connection to herself, ability and the capacity to hold her feminine. And I know I've mentioned that twice. If you want me to speak on that a little bit more, I will.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so I'm going to meander into the world of feminine, like actual sexuality, not sexuality as her signature, but sexual engagement. So if we consider a woman, and this is part of my story, so I can really speak personally on this. I was a woman who, through most of my marriage, now 32 years, probably around year 24, 25, things went awry. And up until that point, I was a woman who didn't understand the things I'm talking about. I was highly sensual, felt like I was unusually drawn to sexual engagement, sexual experience, wanted more of that in my marriage. And I came out of a childhood that was highly religious, so it was very taboo. And my belief was, yay, I'm getting married. I will be so free now in my sexual energy. Finally, I can really let her rip. Well, that wasn't true. That's not how it turned out. And there are a number of reasons for that. In this moment, what I will say, going back to the capacity to hold her own energy, in that period of time I'm speaking about, prior to even really 2020, prior to 2020, when things really went awry, I had no idea how to hold my woman. And so my belief system was, for me to have connection to my own sexual energy, to have sexual pleasure, to really, we in the feminine, we can expand our pleasure when we really know how to go deeply into it. I always craved that. But I wanted the man, because I love men. That's the way I'm made. I wanted the man, my husband. I wanted him to hold it. You turn me on. You be a good lover. You bring me pleasure. You be the one who initiates all of our sexuality. You fill in all the blanks, right? Like I firmly believed it all came from him to me, him to me, him to me. Now I'm a sexual creature because the man outside of me is letting me know I am. Well, then I had an affair. And I didn't go out looking for an affair. It was through a guru, spiritual experience, and the woman I am today would never choose it. But I was in a different place then. And there was a lot of sexual attention. There was a lot of desire. There was a lot of pleasure. Well, guess what? I wasn't full, because that experience with that man, no discredit to the man, but we weren't aligned and meant to be partnered long term. Because so much came from outside of me, I was never full. I was never sure it stayed. It would be there, and in the moment, it was great because here's all this attention, and I feel so sensual. But then the moment that attention was not there feeding my hunger, that feeling went away. So I developed intentionally the capacity to hold my pleasure, my desires, my own sexuality, my woman, and it no longer became dependent upon what the man in my life did or didn't do. It belonged to me. I feel most women do not belong to themselves, and we need that. That's our capacity.
Wow. I feel a little called out. I didn't know. I'm thank you for sharing that story. I mean, that's really brave to come out and share that, you know. But I do relate to what you're saying too, where especially I would say it's more of like that it's his job to turn me on. Because I honestly, I had a conversation like this with my husband recently. Since he had cancer and things have been, you know, pretty dead in that area, and we're trying to revive it. And I kind of put some of that, well, probably all of that responsibility on him.
And I think most women do, to be fair, Lynn. I think it's what has been handed down to us through time, truly.
So this just made me think, I think I have a feeling that women are taught that is how we get value.
Yes.
Is from our man, like that they make us valuable. And so I think what you're like, a big piece of what you're saying is like truly valuing yourself as part of like femininity and like loving who you are, like deep inside. And I think, you know, it's proof that it doesn't come from a man. Like no matter how much, he can't give you that.
Right.
And he needs that from you. He needs that from you too.
Yes. Yes. It's part of what I teach women. And to me, like I'll speak about it in terms of the bind versus the bond. So when I was in relationship with my husband and his value was, I'm a good provider, I'm a good father, I take care of my family. That was the fullness of I'm a good man. My value was I'm very attractive. I'm beautiful. My man wants me. He can't resist me. That means I'm a phenomenal woman. And that was a bind between us because neither of us were truly free to be who we are. We each had to live in these constructed values of what a good man is, what a good woman is, or what a beautiful woman is, what a attractive provider man is. And that's part of what collapsed our marriage because we were in these roles, which were fabulous when we're raising children, right? And we have the family home. Well, then the kids are gone. Now what? Now it's just the two of you. And over time, because the deeper bond wasn't being nurtured, and by the way, that bond first begins with Jacqueline and Jacqueline. Before I could ever bond to my husband, George, I damn well better be bonded to Jacqueline, or I'm going to show up with these Swiss cheese holes in my energy and want him to fill them, which I did for 25, 27 years. Now, the bond is, I'll take care of this woman. And I don't mean like, I'll take care, I can do it myself, rah, rah, rah. I mean like, if something's tender, I'll take care of her. And when I communicate with him, my husband, it won't be, why didn't you? Could you? I need you to. And if it is, I've already been in a space with Jacqueline first to look within and what do I need? And then I can bring my whole self into the marriage and he can be his whole self. So I would say most marriages, at the beginning, there's both a bond and a bind, and we've got to tease them apart by bonding with our own woman first, because that's the only way she can truly, intimately, divinely, physically, emotionally bond with him.
Do you have any tips for someone to start doing that? Like, what should they start with if they feel like that's me, I need to work on that? What tips or suggestions do you have to start doing that?
Okay. Thank you. That's a great question. I'm going to give a couple of different perspectives as an answer. So when I teach women how to bond to themselves, there are 4 pillars. And the first is the human in her body. And this sounds counterintuitive, but here are very real everyday things. Number 1, get outside in the sun at sunrise and sunset. Spend 10 minutes out there. This has to do with your circadian rhythm, which has to do with the balance of your human DNA. Like literally, as human beings, we are designed for this. So that's a really simple one. I would add more to it if I was teaching, but that's simple. The second pillar is her divinity. Women generally are highly mystical. If we go back before Atlantis, if we go before Lemuria, there was a time that was called Mu, M-U. And I've read some books, I've listened to lectures, and during that time, the masculine, as we knew it, power was his strength, and the feminine power was her magic. We are innately designed to be a channel between the physical and the mystical or the spiritual. We actually, many women don't know this. So if you're a woman listening and you are spiritual or you consider yourself to be a mystic, we are the ones who bring that into relationship. That's another place I was looking for my husband, especially when we came back together after the revelation of I had another relationship, we were going to divorce. We really let our old marriage fall apart and created a new one. And a piece of that I had to come into understanding, which was I am the one who gets the spiritual downloads. And for a while, I would be like, why don't you read this book? How come you don't talk about it? How come you're not leading all of the spiritual things? Because he's a man. And he's a man who knows how to go out in the physical world and do man things that I frankly don't want to do. So I would rather be the mystical channel.
Guilty.
Okay.
I am always like when I learn new things spiritually or whatever, I'm trying to share it with him. I'm like, this is so cool. You should listen. And he's like, yeah, cool.
Yeah, kind of.
And there have been times where I felt like I'm growing and moving forward and he's not.
Yes.
And what is our marriage going to look like if he falls behind? Because what if I really surpass him?
Many women fear this, and they call this the gap. There's a gap. And I did. And I remember it was the spring of 2021. We were traveling. We were in Maui, and I had a call with another woman from Estonia who was fabulous. And the way that she thought about things was so far outside our culture and what I had grown up in that she just mesmerized me. And I was really weepy. George and I were still in like we do want to be together, but man, this is hard and I'm so triggered. And I was in, I don't know. I mean, he's not very spiritual. Can I trust myself? Am I making the mistake again? And I said to this woman through tears, I'm like, there's just such a gap. He doesn't believe the way I believe. I can't have these conversations with him. How can we grow? And how can I be with a man that doesn't want to talk about consciousness? And she said this to me, where there's a gap, create what goes in that space. And I was like, I don't know what the hell that means. What do you mean? I've tried. But I understand now because I stopped trying to lead him. So if we look at it energetically, that's the woman trying to lead the man into what we think is the right spirituality and what would help him, right? So there's a little bit of mothering also. There's a woman teacher, there's a woman mother. Clearly you can't figure it out. So let me give you this. And underneath of that, and I can speak about it, Lynn, because I lived it. Underneath of that is, I'm not really actually very comfortable with how it is. So if you could pivot a little bit and be closer to where I am, I'll feel more safe in this marriage. And then I'll trust the marriage. Well, guess what? That's not the order that it goes in. It goes in the order of, I am this woman. I know her. I'm bonded to her. I will trust her. And in my case, that meant she chose the man who'd been my husband and everything fell apart. And I was kind of like, Jacqueline, are you sure about this? I had to keep coming back to my own knowing that this is my man. And I had to then trust that no matter what he believed, because my woman said, this is my man. And she did, unequivocally. That's another story for another day, which is a fabulous story. I could always sort of put my finger back on that moment, that activation that came from my woman to me of this is my man. So every time I wanted to lead him, guide him, fix him, correct him, help him, teach him, I took my hands off. But what I also did, and I didn't realize it until now I have hindsight, I had walked away from my own true expression of my magic and my mysticism and my divinity and my spirituality. And in my case, I did it because it was all connected to the guru man, and I walked away from him. So to get myself out of there, I shut the door on everything. But every time I was looking at my husband to be a little more, what I can see now is I was in a space of expanding my capacity to hold how deeply mystical I am. And just like I said with the sex, to do it without needing his validation or his participation. And so now I hold it fully. Like here's a silly example. Back in the day, before I had the affair, I didn't do really anything spiritual in my house because it felt weird, like I was a weirdo. And so then I'm in this spiritual community. We have a temple community space. I stay there. I cultivate the energy. I love it. I know how to bring the energetics in that invite people, that clear the space, that uplift it. I never did that in my house. I kept it like really secret, quiet. Don't do it in front of these people because they don't get it. After all of that, and really, we've been living here in Florida for 2.5 years. Really, once we lived here, I just be myself. If I want to burn incense, if I want to play my music, if I want to light a candle, whatever it may be, if I want to have a conversation that sounds like I'm a crazy mystical woman, I don't have to leave the house or go in the bedroom or sit outside. I really am my full self. And he loves it. Even though he may not always act like he loves it, in the moments that he expresses it, he loves it. And he doesn't want to participate in it either. But he loves it.
And he doesn't have to participate in it.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
Early in our relationship, I don't know if we were married yet or just dating, but there was times that I had mentioned to my husband, sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do, which to a degree, it's true.
Yes.
Like if you're in a partnership, sometimes you have to compromise and go to that concert, even if you don't like going to concerts or whatever it is. But we don't need to expect them to go further than that, like be really interested in the same things as we are. And I know Kaylin can kind of relate because her boys are baseball boys and she just goes along with it, but she's not really, I don't think you're really into baseball.
I know nothing about baseball. I sit on the bleachers and sometimes I'm like, wait, why did they call him out? And then my husband's literally in the dugout like, it's a forced run or like a forced base or like, I know people, no woman really, well, maybe a few women softball players and stuff are probably laughing at me because I don't even know if that's a term. But my point is, yeah, I know nothing. I know nothing about the rules and my husband's the coach.
Kaylin, may I ask you a question about that? Okay, so Lynn said you are not probably a baseball person, but your guys are, and so you go. So when you go, is there pleasure for you?
Yeah, I like to watch them having fun with doing what they're doing. Honestly, there is nothing more attractive than watching my man at shortstop, that ball smack into his glove and him whip it to first base. And I'm like, holy shoot, that was a shot to my heart. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I love when I can actually watch his games. I think it's a little different now because there was a time where I had two little ones running around the field and it's hot and he's playing ball, but now they're older and they're playing catch and I'm watching the game. And also my boys, I can see that passion in them when they're playing. The attitude of walking up to home plate to hit, the confidence. It's cool to see that in them. I know nothing really about the sport. I know a little bit, I know what a good swing will look like, so I can cheer. I like to cheer the kids on too. I love all of the children on the team. I literally love them. I tell their parents all the time, I'm like, I love your child and I hope they stay friends with my son forever. So I do get a lot of joy, but it's not necessarily from the sport or watching the plays and it's more just the community and being around the parents and being around the kids and watching them love what they're doing and the passion there, experiencing the passion in the community at the ball field is really why I go.
Yes. I love how you answered that. Your whole being came alive. And what's very palpable is that there's pleasure in it for you. Even if you wouldn't choose baseball, there's a pleasure. And we are wired in the feminine for radical pleasure. And coming back to your inquiry, Lynn, I would say when it comes to compromise, there are two ways to look at it. One is a compromise that your woman says, yeah, I don't really love baseball, but I feel okay to go. Like there's not resistance. There's not an internal conflict about doing it. And you're just like, all right, fine. It's what we want to do. We're married. We should do it. It's what you're supposed to do. That is this compromise of, yes, it might not be my first choice, but I can get into it and there will be pleasure for me. That's a beautiful compromise. Contrary to, I really don't want to do this. I chose to be married. He wants to do it. That's the way it goes, right? So in that, the woman has an internal conflict with herself. It's not even with him. Part of herself is like, I don't know why we're doing this. I actually really don't want to do it. And the other part, probably a little more yang-ish, says, too bad, suck it up. You're married. This is what you do. That's a lie. Don't do it.
So you said about the internal struggle within herself. It's not him, it's her, but women often would turn around and blame him.
Yes.
Like, he's making me do this, I don't want to do this, instead of recognizing where it's really coming from. It's within you. So if that is the situation, what should someone do?
That she's feeling, I really don't want to do it. And she's starting to look at him and the whole, he's making me do it. I have to do it for him to be in the marriage. That's your question.
Yes.
Yeah. So when that conflict is with herself, my recommendation in a situation like that is first just take a breath. Take a breath. Take a minute. The very thing we want within our relationship is intimacy, and intimacy from the perspective of, I feel this way. I want him to care how I feel. So let's take him out of the picture for a minute and let's look at just the woman and the part of her that feels this way and wants, quote, him to care. My first inquiry to that woman would be, do you care? Do you care that you don't want to do that? Are you with your woman? Do you have her back? Can she tell you she doesn't want to do that? Do you give her permission to choose not to do it? In my own personal experience of living as Jacqueline in relationship, and in my experience of mentoring women, anytime we want to, or we naturally, because we've inherited this, feel it's him, he's not loving me enough, he's not having enough sex, he's not turning me on enough, he's not spiritual enough, he likes to do this, I hate to do it, I have to do it if I want to be with him. Anytime that dialogue shows up, take a breath and listen to your woman, because she's telling you something. She's really saying, I need something right here. And first of all, she's talking to you, not him.
Yeah. So you need to listen, have that conversation within yourself.
Yes.
And figure it out from there.
And give her permission,
Yeah.
right? So we've come full circle right back to the conversation we had about feminine power. When she's going, well, he's not, he is, I have to, all of that, she's not holding her own power. And women are terrified to hold our own power. And I feel like there are a number of reasons for that. One, we've been punished for it. Another big reason is I encounter a lot of women who fear that if they really, and it's not in the consciousness, it's subconscious, if I really am present with my woman and I'm really living the way she wants to, I might not choose him. My marriage might end. I might be alone. I might not have fill in the blank. And so it's become safer through time to just give that power up, feel like we're powerless. We have to go along in order to be taken care of. And in some centuries, that was true. For a woman to be provided for, she had to marry. To have wealth, she had to marry. To even have her own inheritance, she had to marry. So it's in our lineage, but it's not true. And it's especially not true now.
Right.
We can hold and have the fullness of our beautiful, yummy, feminine potency and being who we are. And we can love and bond as we choose.
But to confirm, that doesn't mean, like you said earlier, that you're going to do everything yourself. I'm going to take care of me. That's not the same thing.
Yes. If you're listening and you're able, if you close your eyes for a moment and you feel energetically, notice in your body how it feels that you're a woman who is deeply bodied, present, has her back, gives herself permission to be who she is. Notice how this feels in your system. I'm going to give you another scenario. Continue noticing what's happening. Now, here's a woman who, I can do it myself. I don't need a man. I've got my own back. I know how to do this. And if I want to be with him, I'll choose to be with him. But I've got myself. You can feel the difference in those signatures. One is yummy and deep and decadent and desirable. One has a hardened exterior that she's just going to go it by herself. And in that perspective, she will struggle to bond and to have the intimacy she truly wants because she's not available for it. She's not really even available to herself. She's kind of like, I'm seeing the image of my husband and I go north for the summer and he's been putting the shutters on the house. So it's kind of like, to have her power, she's put on a few shutters. So XYZ can't get in, right?
That shell you talked about, the masculine being a shell over the feminine, that's what comes to mind when you say that.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's not true power not because she's weak, not because she got it wrong. It's none of that. But because we haven't been, the word I have is entrained, which is sort of like energetically and intentionally and mystically and even on a human level. It hasn't been handed to us. You can be all of who you are. That's your power. You can desire, you can open, you can receive, you can even stand up in the full authority of being you. And you have all your power intact. It's a different sensation that we're not accustomed to.
Yeah. And would you say that society is just starting to kind of portray that a little too? I feel like it's, as a whole, society hasn't really given us that either, but now maybe starting to shine some light on it.
Yeah, as you say that, I feel like what's happening is the threads, like society being this tapestry of everything woven in a certain way. And what's happening is those threads are loosening. Some are frayed, and so they just start to come apart. I also feel there are humans on the planet who are those who go first. We go first. I think my experience in my marriage and the way that I teach women what my particular energy signature is, what I'm here to teach and live and love and birth onto this planet, is these energies I'm talking about. And I did go first. I lived it. And all pieces of it, not just the amazing pieces, the devastating pieces, the heartbreaking pieces. So to answer your question, I do think it's happening on the planet. I think there are those who go first, and then there's the next ones who connect to that. And in doing so, we expand the signature of this energy landing, becoming seeded, birthing on the planet, so that when my daughter has babies, this feminine consciousness that we've grown up in is almost obsolete.
Yeah, something that comes to mind is the way that when I think about growing up as a young girl, a lot of times it was like, ew, pink, or oh, that's girly, or that's a girl show. And like, I remember girls being like, oh, it was cool that they liked boy shows. Like, and girls would try to kind of almost take interest in like boy things. And then there was the term like the pick me girls that were totally just going into masculine like interests and things to almost value, like add value to themselves as a facade to like gain a partnership, if that makes sense. And I think there was like a lot of shame, like a lot of women experience shame in just liking things that felt feminine or cozy or comfortable. And so for a long time in society, it was kind of like frowned upon to like girly, womanly things or to tap into that power and that energy. And part of me feels like I always talk about like a pendulum swinging like throughout history, throughout society. Like I always say, you know, trends are like the pendulum swings. Like once it goes, you know, we had everybody like tight jeans and then the pendulum swings. And I think in history, I'm a big history buff. And I think that there was a lot of women in power historically that, and that power could be scary to men and they would not want us to have that or to really, because it's terrifying to them maybe that we have so much power within us and they feel like, oh, they're advancing further than us. If you look at college graduation rates from the 70s, like when they really started to push like, you know, women into education and things like that, women have now surpassed men in graduation rates and things like that. And so when we're talking about like society, and I feel like we are like the pendulum is swinging towards womanhood and really coming into that power, and a lot of women are on this. And something else that comes to mind as we're talking about this is yesterday we did a branding shoot for the podcast, and you were pulling oracle cards, and the motherline card came out.
Mm-hmm.
And then you flipped open the book and that page came out. And right now I keep hearing it in my head. And it's like generationally, we are healing the mother wound as a whole. A lot of women are doing that. And so when we're talking about this, like, I feel like there is a wave of that, and I can see what you're saying, and I can like feel it, and I'm just sitting here like, yes.
I love that because it's alive in you, and I agree. And you can sort of see in what you spoke about, like through the 60s, through the 70s, and how it's different now. You can see two things. One, more women claiming their power, which I teach women. You have it, but you have to claim it. You have to want it. You have to choose it. You have to then own it. When things don't go a certain way, then we still have to own, I'm involved in this not going a certain way. It's not all outside of me. So you can see in women through time claiming their power, you can also see, going back to how you began about the girls in school, how the feminist movement served us, and also, as with most anything in our history, had this outer effect, which was, it's not really cool to be a girly girl anymore because now you're not claiming your power and we're stronger than that. So you need to show that you're strong and not weak and not subservient and that you can hold your own with the guys, which is lovely. And in terms of human equality is true. We haven't talked about polarity. There's also a polarity that is one piece of developing ourselves and relationship. And that is men and women, we're very different. the way a man looks, if we could look at the energy under a microscope, is different than the energy of the feminine. The strength that is in a DNA human male is different than the strength that is in a DNA human female. So there are differences, and we do ourselves a disservice if we only look through one lens, which is we're all equal. Well, I don't want to be equal to everything that's in my husband or my brothers or my son or my fathers, because that would strip some of what makes me unique as a woman. I also agree that we live in a time where we have more voice. We have more power to express and bring that through. And the third thing I would say in response is I feel, and this is personal to me, so always I tell anybody I speak with, clients, friends, colleagues, take it or leave it. I will never tell you I'm right in the whole world. It's just what I feel. I feel that not only through the centuries, through the ages, through the thousands of years from how things began, and of course there were matriarchal societies just as there are patriarchal societies, I feel that the threat of feminine power was, yes, to the masculine or to the men, it was a threat, but I also feel it was a threat to other women.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, there's been some abuse, oppression, torture, and punishment at the hands of men, but equally so as women. And there's a beautiful book, Lucia Renee, I think is her name, and it's called Unplugging the Patriarchy. And it fascinated me when I read it because I'm like, this was back 2012 and a lot of talk about the patriarchy and the end of the world and all of those things. And it's these three feminine mystics who have their own experience of traveling through time and following the line of the patriarchy. And by the end of the book, where it's really revealed, the patriarchy is you and me. Like we've developed as humans over time that we all carry pieces of it, all of us. And so if we're going to unplug from it, here we come full circle. It's back to you and you. Unplug it internally so that we are women who love other women, truly, and we celebrate them. And we love and celebrate men equally so.
Yeah.
And receive it from women and men.
Yeah, that's what I love the term girl's girl. I always say that. I'm like, that person's a girl's girl. And people will say, what does that mean? And I'm like, that means that you're cheering other women on. You're pouring into, like, you're encouraging women to come into themselves and love themselves and like be authentic to themselves and really just be happy about being who they are. And other women who are comfortable with themselves and are doing that are able to bring that out in other women. But women who aren't, they struggle seeing that power. And maybe it's like because they know that it's capable in them, but they aren't allowing themselves that. So there's like a resentment. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I feel that when a woman resents another woman's power, just like if there's jealousy, if there's envy, if there's insecurity, there's somewhere within her own system that she hasn't yet bonded with. Because when we bond with ourselves, that's the power. That's it. That's what turns the light on, flips the switch. If beautiful, and I know we've been talking a long time, beautiful story of my daughter on her wedding day last year. She's all had her makeup done. She's gorgeous. It's her and I for a moment. Of course, so many things are going through your being when you're getting married, and she is just stunning. And she just looks at me in this beautiful, pure, innocent little girl kind of thing and said, I'm beautiful, right? I look so beautiful. Am I beautiful, Mom? And then later in the day, she's like, I'm so beautiful. Oh. And she wasn't being like egotistical. I'm so beautiful. She was just so connected to the beauty of herself and the love of herself and being this woman and choosing this dress, this makeup, this hair, this man, that was the beauty. That is a woman who loves herself. And I would love to stand in a room of women and have them say, I'm beautiful, right? And not asking for validation, knowing when they walk by that mirror and catch a little glimpse of themselves, they're kind of like, oh, yum. Hi. I want that for women.
And in saying I'm beautiful, right, and feeling that it's not just the physical beauty, you mean like deeply feeling as a person, as a woman,
Yes.
I am beautiful.
Yes, just like we've talked about it going down into the belly, this came from right up out of the wholeness of who she is. And it was so just so pure and beautiful.
You almost made me cry. You made me cry. My eyes are starting to water. I'm like, no.
Well, and I think that's so gorgeous, Lynn, because that's what you're in the business of doing, right? You're in the business of women come to you. And in some ways, even if you're not saying it, you are energetically saying to them, you're so beautiful. And she gets to come here and see herself and feel, I'm so beautiful, right? I really am. I can believe it. I can be it. It's okay.
Yeah. And it's an energy exchange.
And they memorialize it. They always have the photos to go back to. That's why we try to really tell people, like, the experience that we have in the studio here is not about sensual photos for your partner. Sure, it can be that. It can be that, right? But it's so much more than that.